This week at the Wenner Folsom podcast, I had one of my very favorite men on, and he is a K4 alum, James Spike Harris. He's a Marine, he's a boxing champion, he's a deacon, he's the chief of police, running for mayor of a town in Louisiana, and one of the more righteous men serving today. And so it was a great opportunity to be able to unpack some of the issues around service, masculinity, race, community, and a host of other issues that are incredibly relevant in our time.
Yeah, this is a podcast that is really going to be potent and get you thinking because it was really fun. So jump in and enjoy. All right. Welcome to another podcast episode of the Wenner Folsom podcast. This is your place for battle-tested leadership and resiliency. And we're really excited about our guest today. This is going to be a really fun call, really enlightening, and really excited to jump in.
Proud and honored to have our guest today, Mr. James Spike Harris. He's a K4 alum. He's also a Marine, never an ex-Marine, still a Marine.
That's right.
Boxed in the Marines, chief of police, running for office, a bunch of nonprofit programs for knuckleheads who are learning through martial arts and boxing. I mean, pastor, what don't you do, sir?
Well, I'm not a pastor yet, but I am a deacon. So,
okay, all right.
Well, just trying to give back. As you all know, when I joined K4, and I just got to say, hey, hats off to you guys. You taught me a lot about myself. Even though I have a lot of accomplishments, I still wasn't happy with myself because I didn't know what was wrong. But I'm here to tell you, K4 taught me that and taught me my archetype. And with that being said, after I learned about myself internally and the things that was going on and what I learned from K4, I can enjoy me. I can enjoy now what I do or have been teaching others. And it's just a great thing. So and I think this is a program that everyone, no matter what your stake is in life, where you are in life, every man needs to go through this training. 100%.
And obviously, the entry to this program is called the Rite of Passage, which is an initiation from an adolescent psychology to a mature psychology, which is about service. And I've often used the Marines as an example of the closest that we have remaining in our culture of a full initiation. And I'm Army, Joshua's Air Force, and our basic training was not as robust as the initiation of the Marines, which is why I was in the Army and Josh was in the Air Force and you are a Marine, because that is a transition.
That's right.
So was that initiation part of what led to your life of service? Because obviously there's not many men who are serving at the level and longevity that you are.
Mm-hmm. Well, my thing, I went into the Marine Corps 5 days after I graduated. I signed up a year in advance. I did end up doing some time in the Air Force, and that's great. But starting out, going into the Marine Corps gave me the base of what I needed. And Marine Corps boot camp was hard. It was outstanding. But I had football coaches and other coaches that were hard on us. And boot camp physically wasn't as hard for me, or mentally. Wasn't as hard for me as a lot of people because they didn't go through that. So being that warrior archetype, being that young man going into the Marine Corps, it gave me another push. And it also gave me a lot of self-confidence because I didn't think I would ever do or could do. Climb mountains, go places I've never seen, do things I've never done before. Heck, I couldn't even swim, but they threw me in a 12-foot, 15-foot pool of water and hey, I swam. And it just gave me the self-confidence that I needed. And it taught me about decision-making. It taught me about leadership. And it became second nature. It was a reflex action. And I think in our book, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, there's a passage in there that states it gives kudos to the Marine Corps for doing exactly what I just said. So I don't know what page and what archetype, but it is up under the warrior archetype, which is what I read first. So it gave me what I needed. But even though I had the Marine Corps to teach me all of this and go through it, it was a lot of hand holding. Go here, do this, go there, do that. This is what you do. And it was a lot of hand holding. And so when you're let out there on your own, it becomes a little bit more difficult. And there's no time for second guessing in combat or in boxing or anything else. So that's something that needs to be honed in on. And I honestly wish I would have had this training. If I'd have had the K4 training at 18 and being a Marine, oh man, I'd be on another planet right now.
Me too.
You know. So not that it's too
Yeah.
late, but yeah, I mean
Yeah.
all of us was, man. So and I keep throwing K4 in there, man, because it's just been awesome for me. I actually teach it to my officers here about decision making, knowing where they are, knowing what they're doing, and knowing themselves. So that's a big thing. It's a big push, and we need to go this
Yeah,
way with
there's
it.
and being in, an officer now, what inspired you to move into that? Because there's a lot of veterans that are now peace officers. So curious where that came from for you to step into that role.
Man, I never wanted to pick up another gun. When I stepped out of the Marine Corps and the Air Force, even though the whole time I was in there, if we weren't fighting a war, as you all know, I was in the ring fighting. I had to fight. That was in me, that warrior spirit. But once again, I didn't have this training to know why I wanted to do this, what was driving me to do that. So, long story, I know I got off track a little bit. So, long story short, this thing here pushing me in that direction, man. And you got to rephrase the question for me. I
Yep.
started to get off on boxing, and I got a little sidetracked.
Yeah,
But
I
I'm
was
sorry.
I was
Rephrase the
curious
question
what
for me.
inspired you to go in to become a police officer. Like, where was that inspiration?
Okay, yeah. Okay, so if you go back and look at my high school transcripts, and they say, "What do you want to be?" I did say law enforcement. I want to be a police officer. Okay, but when I went in the Marine Corps, I started out with different jobs, and I wasn't law enforcement. I started out with a tank battalion, then I went into the administrative side of the house, and then I started boxing. So I didn't get that opportunity to do that. Okay. But when I got out of the Marine Corps in 1999, I became, in the Air Force, I became a security forces. This is where I ran a Mark 19 platoon. I was still putting my Marine Corps training intact, mainly a infantry type of unit. I had 8 deployments under my belt after September the 11th. I became a trainer, not just a cop. I became a trainer, and once again, I didn't have to go to boot camp. So I went straight into the Air Force as a cop. Went to cop school. When I got out of the Air Force, I moved around in government contracting. So I did a lot of classified hiring for different intel agencies, things like that. And so I finally moved back home. I saw the trouble that was going on in my hometown. They had defunded the police department. The mayor here, he went to
Hey,
prison.
James,
He
you
defunded the
in
police
Louisiana,
department.
right?
I'm in Louisiana, yeah. I'm in northern Louisiana, a town called Jonesboro. I'm right outside. I'm right in between
Okay.
Shreveport and Ruston. I mean Shreveport, Monroe, in that area. And so I actually, when I learned what was going on, I did have my criminal justice degree. I wanted to be the city clerk. I didn't want to pick up another gun. I really didn't, gents. I was tired of it, kind of wore out. But this is an elected position. And so the former chief, we took a liking to each other. And he basically took me under his wing, and he asked me if I wanted to be the chief. And this is a true story, gents. I am not lying to you. I don't want to get all weird on you, but listen to me. I told him I would rather be the city clerk, but I'll go home and pray about it. And so I was living with my mother, traveling, and I would just go and come as I please. So I prayed about it, and that meant I had to, my mother literally. In Louisiana, we have parishes, not counties. My mother lives on a street. You walk across the street, you're in the city limits. Where she lives is the parish. So that meant I had to find my own place, which was no problem. And I prayed about it. And the very next day, my uncle from Chicago called and said, I got a house I need you to look after for me. And that house is in the city limits. And I end up buying that house from my uncle. I can't, gents, I can't
Wow.
make that up. So I knew right then that I would win the election. And I won the election by 40 something
That's
votes.
called supernatural aid, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that is a what we call it here is a testimony. that is that is my testimony. So I ran for election twice and I won twice. And I have a great group of people here in town. Of course, being law enforcement, I have some that don't care for me too much, but I have a job to do. So that's how I ended up back in law enforcement.
Yeah, I guess what keeps coming up for me is being a black man that is now chief. What's been your experience around race? I'm really
Oh,
curious because there's a lot going on currently
well,
in the time that you grew up, right? So I'm curious what your experience was like through that, and has it changed over time through the Marines, through sports, through being a police chief? Has it been the same perspective? Really curious to experience your experience.
well, some is changing. You still have some of that old ideology still there. For me, I'm the first black chief in my town elected. Therefore, anytime you're the first, you know you're going to catch hell. I didn't catch hell from whites. I caught hell from, the black community. Okay. And then I had to look at it from a psychological standpoint. Throughout history, if you look at law enforcement in the United States started basically with slave catchers. Okay. So you want to know psychologically through history, black people do not care for the police. And then you fast forward on up to this time and you start out with Rodney King and things like that. There's a lot of things that have been going on in the past with law enforcement in the black community where African Americans do not trust the police. And now most of the people that started out against me have known me all of my life. But when I slapped that badge on, I became the enemy in their mind. So my goal has been to change that mindset from inside out. I can get out here and protest and join these different groups. And, if that's somebody's flavor, that's fine. But it's not mine. I feel like if you're going to make a difference, you need to make a difference from inside out. And they have to see that. Now, everybody's not going to agree with me with the things I've had to do. But I can honestly say my department, the people that I surrounded myself with here at this department have made me look good. So this is a team here, black and white, okay, in my department. And my come to Jesus speech, if you have a racist or prejudiced bone in your body, you can't work for me. Everybody gets treated. We can't treat everybody the same, but we can treat everybody fair. And that's Marine Corps 101.
Yeah, that was my experience. I grew up in a little white trash town, up in way of the boonies, Washington State, and I didn't know any black men, black people.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know any
Yeah.
Hispanics. I didn't know any Southern. I had never been out of my state. And for me to get in the army and all of a sudden in this big melting pot of all these crazy cultures and dialects, I almost couldn't understand because they were so Southern,
Wow.
like the Southern guys who actually talked like that. And there was zero tolerance for any racism because you all wore green.
Oh, yeah.
You
Oh, yeah.
all
None.
wore green.
Hmm.
And I was like, it's solved. The shit is solved, but it's not solved out here. But it definitely, when you are in Marine Corps or Army, it is solved because you're wearing that. You're wearing
Yes.
the.
Yes. Yeah, you're wearing the same colors. You're going after the same mission. And don't get me wrong, I ran into that in the military as well, where you had individuals that never been around another culture, another race. Even in this small town here, this town is about 5,000. The cultural differences are so vast, and no one wants to discuss race. I'm not afraid. I have two white city councilmen, and I have three black city councilmen. The two whites and the former chief, we can sit here and talk about race just like you and I. People are afraid to talk about race and the issues that have been from the past. And a lot of it doesn't boil down to racism. A lot of it boils down to lack of understanding of those cultures. Right here, and I can tell you all a funny story. Every time there's a funeral, okay, and the officers have to work a funeral, and I'm not gonna lie to you, man, this is crazy. So if you work a white funeral, it's okay. It's gonna last about 45 minutes, maybe. You go through the processions we lead through. But that black funeral, you're gonna be out there 2 or 3 hours waiting, and it's like, well, who died? Who is it? And it's like I'm trying to get out of it because I don't want to wait there for 3 hours. I don't want to be out there. But those are cultural differences. That black funeral, you're gonna have people there, man, and they're gonna be going. Everybody's gonna be talking. They're gonna be going on and on and on and on, and no cops want to work that black funeral. So, and it's not a racist thing. It's just that look, I got to sit here for three
On that
hours.
motorcycle,
I don't want
on
to
my
do it.
motorcycle. Out in the
Yeah,
heat.
that's right. Right. And I just think that's a funny thing, but it's more or less a cultural and a lack of understanding of each other's culture that I believe that brings a lot of problems, with race relations and especially dealing with cops too.
I had I live in a predominantly black neighborhood here in California. There's no big trees in this neighborhood. No big trees. And I was informed by my neighbor who's been here multiple generations of the family, is that big trees are hanging trees. African
Oh
African
yeah,
American
wow.
families in California who came from Texas,
Uh huh.
you keep your trees like little shrubs. And nobody has
Wow.
German shepherds because German shepherds are police dogs. And I
What?
and I
That's
you know
right.
I and I was informed when I moved to this neighborhood, like, your trees are getting kind of big, and
Yeah.
it would never have occurred to me that there is an ancestral legacy
Oh man.
of big trees or hanging trees. I was like,
Yeah.
oh
Same thing with
wow,
cops. That's right. You got the German Shepherd dogs. The same thing with cops. And I didn't know about the trees. You just taught me something. But if you look at that, when you say the German Shepherd dog, you go back to Muhammad Ali. He used that against George Foreman in Africa because the same thing was being used against them from the Flemish over there, using those dogs against the Africans over there. And he used that. He knew that, and he used that against George Foreman. So that boils down to a cultural thing that the average person wouldn't just
yeah,
think about. But instead of me calling you a racist because you're growing trees, how about I go talk to you like your neighbor and tell you, hey, and then you can get
yeah.
understanding. And so instead of disliking you because you got a big tree in your yard, and you never knew why I dislike you. So I think a lot of it's going to boil down to 99.9% of it's going to boil down to the communication.
Yeah, I think that is what
Yeah.
I'm observing is there's so much collective trauma. And to your point, if we track the history, there's a reason there's so much collective trauma. That's very real and very valid. And I think what breaks my heart is I see so many of these videos now with the introduction of police cams, and so much of the narratives online are showing very small clips without a real understanding of a
Hmm.
law officer's protocol. And it just feels like collective re-traumatization again and again and again that really triggers the nervous system and creates almost a war against police. And I know there's police that are still racism. I know it still exists in different pockets, but a lot of the police, maybe it's just
Hmm.
in our community at K4 or the men that I talk to, a lot of them are saying like, hey, we're fighting a war, but there's no race when you put on the uniform. We're looking at who are we at war with in the communities, and that becomes the collective brotherhood or sisterhood together. So I'm just curious, is your perspective when you see in general looking across the country of police in general, what's your perspective on it? Do you see that changing from where it was? Do you see still there's a large pockets of racism happening on the police side, or do you see that culture shifting from the inside out, like you're stepping into in leadership roles? Just curious your perspective on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I see it shifting. It's shifting because of body cameras. Let's just be honest about it. When you step out of your door, you probably video time 100 times a day. Everybody has a cell phone now, and so it's making people more aware of their actions. I tell my officers every day, our body cameras are not for the public. They're for you. They're for your protection. Because just as you said earlier, the media is going to cut it, and social media, it's a great thing, but it has a shadow side as well. Okay. So one incident in particular, I forgot where it was. This black male was in a store in Walmart, and he went in there to buy his son a bike, and the police came and arrested him for no reason. And somebody put this on social media, and it created a big racial storm. Well, being the investigator that I am, I want to see the whole clip. Now, all these people sitting over here with this small clip of them just arresting this guy. This guy walked into Walmart playing a box of music loud with profanity on it. The manager was walking behind him trying to get him to stop. He was cursing everybody out, stopping behind him. He went and got on a child's bike with the radio, riding around Walmart and just riding around, acting crazy, cursing people out. And this was all on video as well. And then the cops were called, of course. The manager walked around the store 20 minutes until the police got there, and then they arrested the guy. But the only part that was showed on social media was the actual arrest and how racist cops were out here and this and this and that. The cops just came to do their job. The same things happen here, not at that magnitude, but when something happened, of course, it's the police fault in the African American community, because that's what they've been taught. That's what the media is showing them. That's what social media is saying. And then you get some idiot to post a half a clip up there and not tell the whole story. Well, it creates such distrust with law enforcement. But with the body cameras, and all too often, some of the criminals are, even cops that commit murders or have to shoot somebody, and then they go to court, and the judge, and I don't have all the information, but the judge say, well, not guilty. Well, the black community is in an uproar because they've been given a small portion of the information, but when that information gets to court, now they have all of it. But now you see police departments releasing those videos, and then now some of the uproar is starting to die down. But every now and then you'll get it to die back. I mean, push back up. And I blame the media for a lot of that. I really do, because I think they're looking for ratings a lot of times, and not all of them. Just tell the whole truth, in my mind. But until we get to that point as a country, it's still going to happen.
Hey, we thank you for listening to the Wenner Folsom podcast. Just a couple quick notes. First, if you are a man and you're looking for an honorable and inspiring group of men to hold you accountable and challenge you to grow in your relationships, your fitness, your career, your finances, and your life, go to www.k4men.com. And if you are a veteran, first responder, or man or woman who deals with trauma, and you're looking for some resiliency tools and skills for you, your team, or your organization, go to valorresiliency.com. Hope to see you there. Back to the podcast. One thing I love what you're doing, and this is so valid to me, is I hear you praying, right? You're stepping into service and saying, what can I do to serve? What can I do to do something about what's happening in the world and step into a leadership role? And for me, that is the change. That is the change, as we start to create the new world that we want. And we have to lead by that. And I think what's so challenging is, like, I think we have to make police officers the honorable and noble role that it is. And I love your viewpoint, because that's my experience. Is it's hard. It is hard to be a police officer. There's jokes in the community like firefighters are the heroes and police everybody hates. So you're stepping into a role which everybody already collective hates. And then as a black man or an African-American man, now you have an even greater, because now you're hated even more because of the collective trauma. But I feel like this is the world we need to create in order to start to change the narrative, is like, this is a respected role. This is a role that you get in to serve and protect our communities. And so just curious if there's anything else, if anybody's listening, to understand that perspective. Like, because I feel like police don't get a voice a lot, and warrior culture just goes, I'm here to do my job and take whatever I get because I'm serving. But like, what's the collective feeling, what that must feel like, right? Of a police officer choosing to serve and then being looked at the enemy, even though day after day you're choosing to serve and protect.
Yeah, it's tough. I can't tell you how many times, and I didn't know it at the time, but until I got with K4, and don't get me wrong, I'm gonna keep bringing this up. I had individuals that I could bucket to, and without being able to bucket to them, didn't know what to call it. I just call it venting. And without having that ability to have somebody to listen to, I would have been out of this profession a long time ago. I can go somewhere else and make tons of money. I'm not here for the money, and most of these people that do this job aren't here for the money. But when I went through K4 training, because you can't bucket to everyone, because they will go out and talk and gain their own opinion. But you guys gave us an atmosphere that I know that I can go to, and I have people that I can call, and I bucket to them when I need to. Without that, I wouldn't be able to handle it. I mean, it's a tough situation. It's not a good time for law enforcement at all. People don't want us around until they need us. And then when they need us, they want us to do the job the way they think we ought to do the job, but we have to follow the law. And I say that all too often, that you have to be a strong minded individual with thick skin to be able to get into law enforcement now and to be successful. And one of the main things that I do here to help my community is what we call community service. I tell my office, get out the car. You see an elderly person mowing their yard. Get out the car, carry some bottles of water in your vehicle, get them some water, find a little child in the neighborhood, give them $10 to go help this elderly person cut their yard. I try to work with community leaders and getting the youth something to do. We do things. We've had 2 hurricanes, a snowstorm, and a tornado. I know the elderly. I need a call. Do you need help? Do you need sandbags? Let's get them down there beforehand. We go and pick up their trash cans that's been blown over. I call it little stuff, but to them, it's a big thing. And sometimes all it takes is a phone call. Hey, you okay? Your family need anything? I've gotten with people. We've had the National Guard to come in and bring water. We set up checkpoints for people to come get water, and those elderly people that couldn't get out their house, especially during a snowstorm, we've delivered water to them. We're not just here to arrest people and do things. We're here to protect and serve. And our problem in politics, and I use the pyramid as an example. I'm an elected official, so I'm at the top of that pyramid, and I'm the leader, and everybody else works for me. No, sir. No, ma'am. You're at the bottom of that pyramid, and you work for everybody else. So it's that inverted pyramid scheme. And so we have to serve and not be self-serving. And so if we can get our so-called politicians to start serving the people instead of serving themselves, I think I know this will be a much better country than what it is with law enforcement, with everything else. So,
Hey, so this is one of the important things, right? That at some point in the hero's journey of K4 or masculinity, it does lead to service. That is the end goal
yes.
of masculinity. That's why we claim our power and our vitality and our understanding about ourselves is that needs to be directed at something larger than ourselves. And you're that guy. Like you were that guy in that community when you came through. Everybody's like, I'll follow that man because you walk your talk. Like you
Yeah.
legitimately walk your talk. And I have mentioned it to Josh. I said I would vote for that man. I would follow that man. I would give that man my sword. That's the man that I would follow. And so you're rare. You're a rare man who has gone through the acquisition of power and righteousness, and now you're in the place where you were willing to step up into a hot and even hotter seat. You're going into a hotter seat.
Well, man, I was a true adolescent warrior, big time, and I've had people, man, to help me. People, my superiors. I can go down the line: Major Katzberg, Daryl Toomer, T.C. Collins. One of my boxing coaches was even Roy Jones Sr. T.C. Collins was another boxing coach. But let me tell you, I'm going to give you a name right here. I learned so much from this guy, and we call him the ultimate warrior, the Marines Marine, General Mad Dog Mattis. That was my boss.
Yep.
So
the warrior monk, that man.
the warrior monk. So when
Yep.
you have people like that, and it culminates, you surround yourself with those type of people, and you start to mimic and follow those type of people. That's what you will become. So where I am now, man, and don't get me wrong, I had a great home life, mother. My father wasn't there, but I had a stepfather who was pretty big in the community and the church and things like that. So I don't take credit for any of that, but I had to go through my little adolescent stage and a lot of the things where I am now, because somebody probably ticked me off and told me I couldn't do it. I got my doctorate degree because I had an ex-wife to tell me at the time I didn't have a degree. She told me, "You're just a dumb country bumpkin idiot. You don't know anything." I'm like, "Oh, really?" She had a bachelor's degree, and I said, "Okay." So I got my doctorate. Now, and I hate to say it, man, and God rest her soul, but she passed a couple of years ago, and I was like, "Dang it, I didn't even get a chance to throw that in her face." I hate to say it, but a lot of that drives me when people tell me what I can't do or what can't be done. But now I try to take it and use it for more positive things. Well, nobody's going to work together to do anything for these kids. Really? Okay. let's find out. And I'll go out and do it, and I'll go out and put it together. Right now, we got a major summer program coming up. We got the venue. I got people involved. I even got churches donating their vans to ship kids out here because it's going to be 20 miles out in the country, out in the boonies out there. But it's a old school. They turned into a community center. And man, she's opened the doors to me. So we're going to be out there training, mentoring, boxing, basketball tournaments, everything for these kids this summer. So I'm excited about that. But we pulled together some people that's going to help this entire event. So pretty much when people say it can't be done, I'd say, well, I'm going to show you a way. And that was a challenge with me as becoming the chief too. When I became the chief, the old chief told me, "Oh, it'll take you," because they did shut this PD down. He told me it would take me 10 years to get this police department back to full operation. Well, I kind of lost that one. I'm at 8, and it's not fully operational yet. But we're 7 days a week, but we're not 24 hours. And the best way that I can help this police department right now is to be the mayor. And even though I don't work for the mayor, but he does a lot of things over there that hinders. He's the same mayor that shut it down before. So he went to prison, got out, got reelected, and he's back on trying to shut the PD down again. But so the best place I can help this PD and help this town is to become the mayor. And people telling me, well, you can't do it and it won't be done. Well, you know what? Watch. And so that's kind of my mentality at this point in time.
Is there anything, I mean, anybody listening or anything that we can support you with? Because this is the new, these are the new leaders. You're an example of the type of leadership of men coming back into the world that are honor, growth, service-based, that are like, hey, I'm going to step in and make a change that I need to change and do what it takes to do it. Is there anything we could do to support you? Because you're really the example of what we need in this world.
Well, right now you guys are doing it. I mean, you're putting this out here. You gave me some of the stepping stones that I need. And don't get me wrong, I'm not afraid to ask for any help. When that time comes around July, when we have to qualify, I will be reaching back out to you guys. And it's more right now is that I'm putting a plan together. We don't plan to fail, we fail to plan. And so we're not only putting a plan together for my campaign, we're putting a 10-year plan together for the town, the water system, roads, recreation, school system. A lot of these things are becoming dilapidated around here. And so I will be reaching out for advice and things like that. So I just tell you, stand by and thanks for offering.
You got some fans
I
around
appreciate it.
around the globe, sir. You got some
Yeah.
resources.
Wow. Well, I tell you guys what, man, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I need to learn how to do a podcast and put this stuff out there. I know we got men in K4 with that. I got some campaign people here locally that knows the culture and things like that. So I'm kind of putting that together. But I'm going to need something. And then once I get everything mapped out, trust me, I'll know. And then I'll be reaching out to you guys or into the community for that.
Yeah, we're here. We're happy
Yeah.
to support.
Mayor sounds
Oh, thank
good.
you.
Governor sounds even better.
Hey, man, you
I'm
never
just
know where
saying.
this thing can take you. All I
Just
need is
saying.
somebody to tell me I can't do it.
Oh man.
I don't know why that motivates me, man. Maybe y'all can give me some insight on that.
Well, we have a lot of men in high executive offices, including
Mhm.
commanders of chief, who have
Oh,
not served. They have
wow.
currently have not served. Previous president has not served. The president before him has not served.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
That's our commanders in chief. And
Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
there does seem to be some sort of honor-based nobility of our leadership, that should be a requirement of understanding what it means to sacrifice yourself for the sake of something larger than yourself. That is service, and it doesn't
Yeah.
exist in our political sphere currently. So
Yeah. Yeah.
deeply grateful for you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I just think we have gotten to the point where a lot of this masculinity is kind of being looked down upon, and maybe that's where I was hurting, and I think that has a lot to do with recognizing that and not feeling bad about being the way that I am. I'm straightforward, no nonsense type of guy. Love to have fun, but on a masculine role, and it just seemed like masculinity was being repressed, and I think that's a lot of what's going on with our kids now with want to kill each other and shooting each other and doing a lot of things that they're doing. I really believe. I think, Phil, I talked to you a while back about creating a program, and it kind of died off. And I know I got busy, and no excuses though. But I think I mentioned to you about doing this for teenagers and around that area where program they can understand because I believe if we can really get a program to attract those teens and get parents to push them into taking this program, during the summer or something like that. Personally, I think it would help out a lot with a lot what's going on. A lot of these guys that are shooting up these schools, I believe they're being attracted by these groups and they're being manipulated and they're being manipulated on because of their own insecurities and these kids are taking it and they're being told what to do by these groups, these hate groups, and that's why they're doing some of the things that they're doing. But if they had some of this kind of training and say, look, it's about a brotherhood and not this brotherhood over here. This one here is going to lead you to success. This one here is going to lead you to on a road to failure. So that's just my thought
100%.
on that. So yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a collective awareness of what's happening. It seems like in general, there's a lot of trauma. I tend to look at it through the nervous system. So I tend to look at everybody is in pain and everybody has trauma. And so I think as a society, we're caught in this villain, victim, savior mindset in general. And we're either feeling victimized and wanting to find a villain and then take it out on the villain. And then it just recreates that continual cycle. And so my personal belief is like, we have to do what you're doing. We have to do the work on ourselves, make peace with our own wounding, do some deep forgiveness work, which is hard and painful, do some grieving, get the anger out, and then choose to say, hey, how can I step into service? How can I be the change that I want to see in the world?
Yeah.
How can I start to create the change? Because it doesn't, by taking out our insecurities on hurting other people, like that doesn't solve it. That actually just creates more trauma. And the people doing it, they may step into their sadist shadow for a minute and it may feel good in that shadow expression, but the rest of their life, if they stay alive, they're going to be in shame and in pain and in, right. So they're not solving it either. The true solution comes from doing the work and actually healing and
Yeah.
actually stepping into service and purpose-based work. So, hey man, it's been such a pleasure having you on, James.
James, it since I first met you in that rite of passage, this was probably sometime last year. Like I have always liked and admired you, and it's great to reconnect. I love what you're doing, not only for your community and for our community, but the path that you are walking is visible to many, many of us who are watching who you are and how you're walking that path. And I can't think of a more important path for our society as a whole than the one you are currently walking. So deep appreciation for you. Stay on that path, please, even though I know it's hard. And man, it's so many blessings. Look forward to following your campaign, sir.
Yeah, and I'd say we always end with a challenge. So those that are listening, your challenge this week is take time to notice who you may be judging or who you may have some differences with, and take time to get curious and understand their world. So where you notice you may have some judgment, could be towards anybody in this world, where you notice some judgment, take a moment to get curious and start asking some questions. Get into the world a little bit. As James said earlier, it all is an act of listening, compassion, and getting curious and asking questions. So that's your challenge this weekend. Thanks again, James. It's an honor to have you with us, and everybody else, stay battle tested.
Roll.
Thanks, James.
Thank you, bro.